Do you constantly doubt your worth in your relationships and even in your dating life? Well, join me in this video as we uncover the secrets to really breaking through any kind of major insecurity in your love life so that you can have a life filled with confidence, with trust, and with a much deeper connection. And you can finally stop insecurity from holding you back any longer. My name is Thais Gibson, and I'm the founder of the Personal Development School, and I'm really happy you're stopping by. If you're new to this channel, I create videos on a daily basis that are all about the subconscious mind, attachment trauma, and really how to overcome our past experiences so that we can build much more connected relationships. So, in today's video, we are going to really break down two major components that really can be life changing if we apply these to our struggles with insecurity, because we're really dealing with root cause. Like, what are the actual roots of insecurity and how can we break through? And I'm hoping that by the end of this video, you will be able to apply these two life changing tools in a way that will help you feel so much more confident, self empowered, worthy, and ultimately more connected in your relationships. So, here's the first major tool. And it's that we need to look at our insecurities as feedback that are showing to us our core wounds. Now, I'm going to explain what that actually means, but I want to illustrate this first with a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's a Rumi quote. And Rumi says, in this quote specifically, "If I am irritated by every rub, how will I ever be polished?" And what Rumi means by this is that if everything that gets under my skin I'm so busy pushing away because I'm irritated by it. I'm never actually allowing myself to be polished or refined or to basically grow through these things that bother me. And what this quote also illustrates is that the things that upset us are feedback, and they're feedback essentially about the things within us that still need love, support, and healing. Now, where insecurities actually come from when we look at a root cause component is insecurities are usually based on false ideas we've acquired about ourselves because of painful past experiences. So, I'm actually going to share a client example with you since I ran a client practice for about 10 years. And what I want you to see here is that if this example that I'm going to share with you of Jane, we'll call my old client, Jane grew up in a really critical household. She grew up with a family who, both of her parents were very strict, very rigid, quite controlling. Both of her parents were this way because they actually thought it was best for Jane. So they would constantly tell her what she didn't do right. They would constantly, if she got, an A minus on an exam, say, "Where's the A plus?" They didn't validate what she was doing well. They were constantly invalidating what wasn't essentially perfect. And it's because both of her parents thought that this is what was going to grow her and make her tough and strong and successful in the outside world. So they didn't mean to hurt Jane. But what I want you to see here is that trauma for us isn't always trauma with a big T. Trauma can be the repetitive things that we can't properly emotionally process. And if they happen frequently enough, they can have a similar impact to a big T trauma. And with Jane specifically, one of her sort of traumatic components of her childhood was that she constantly felt small. She constantly felt like she was never good enough no matter what she did. And because she had internalized all of this conditioning she was getting about how, she was never doing good enough in anything that she was trying really hard to do, she acquired this false idea about herself that she was just never good enough. In fact, she felt like she was not good enough to be in a relationship with somebody else, even despite the fact that as an adult, she had a thriving career. She took great care of herself. She was healthy. She had all the great things on paper to show for it. But internally, because of this repetition and conditioning of feeling like she was never good enough, this is the false idea she acquired about herself. Now, this is actually a core wound. Okay. The idea that I am not good enough, the idea that I'm unlovable, that I am unworthy, these different ideas that we acquire about ourselves because of these conditioning events, these are essentially core wounds that form. And so she had this huge core wound that I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable. She actually had two of them together. And whenever I think of situations like this, I think of this video I saw years ago. And it's kind of a sad video, but I always think of this image in my mind where there was these elephants that were baby elephants and they were tied to small trees. And you would see in this video the elephants try to yank away, from the trees and set themselves free, but they couldn't because, they were too small and the tree wasn't very big either, but it was big enough that it would stop the elephant from being able to yank the rope that was tied to their trunk and escape. And you see these elephants later on, it fast forwards to these years and years later, and you see these huge elephants tied to the very same trees. And even though, this elephant's huge now, and just with one big tug, they would be able to set themselves free, instead, they don't bother. It's like they've accepted that they cannot set themselves free. And it's because of conditioning. It's this learned helplessness that's been formed because of the repetition of being exposed to something many, many times over, where this elephant essentially internalizes this idea: I'm stuck, I'm trapped, I'm helpless. Of course, they don't have language for these things, but we form these concepts and ideas based on conditioning. And we have the exact same experience as humans every single day. And particularly, these things are strong in childhood. So, in the case of Jane, she had these really strong self concepts, these false ideas: I'm unlovable and I'm not good enough to be in a relationship. And so, every time she would start dating, all of these insecurities would come on so strong. And she would sabotage the relationship by pushing people away because she constantly felt like, no, I'm not good enough to be with somebody. I'm eventually going to get rejected anyway. So I might as well sort of pull myself out of the race before I get hurt. And this is how she showed up in relationships. Now, we can have different patterns in terms of how we respond. Sometimes we can feel unworthy, so we can cling too tight, or we can people please too much, or we can try too hard. And we can really abandon ourselves and our truth because we don't feel good enough. Other times, like Jane, will push people away. It can be different for each individual, but at the end of the day, point number one is that we have to recondition these ideas by learning to question their validity. Just because we had these ideas about ourselves in the past does not mean they are real in the present. And it actually doesn't mean they were real in the past either, right? These are just the way we interpreted the situations we were exposed to. If we look at Jane's reality, Jane, after having discussions with her parents, actually found out that her parents said, We always thought you were good enough. We always thought you were successful and you were great at what you did. We were just always being critical because we were trying to build you more for the future. This is actually a very healing conversation that Jane ended up having with both of her parents at one point in her healing journey. And this is very common for a lot of people. But the way she interpreted and internalized this information as a child was that I am not good enough. So we have to take these false ideas. We have to remember this first point and concept, which is that your insecurities are feedback. They're showing you your old wounds and stories that you've acquired about yourself. And we have to actually challenge them. So I want you to ask yourself this question: when I feel insecure in relationships, what is my big story that I'm telling? Sometimes you'll have more than one. Is it that I'm not good enough? Is it that I'm not worthy? Is it that I'm always going to be abandoned? Or is it that I'm always going to end up alone? Is it that if somebody really sees me, they won't accept me or they'll think something's wrong with me? Is it that if I really open up to somebody and let them know that I have needs, that they'll think I'm bad? What are the big ideas for you that you've acquired because of your upbringing, and how are they still with you in your present time today? And I want you to try to pick out here what those one or two big stories are, because once you see them and once they become conscious, we can start actually questioning them. And, what I urge you to then do in this situation is to ask yourself, can I 100% know that this idea is actually valid in all the situations I project it onto? Okay. So when you're on a first date and you're going, I'm not good enough to be in a relationship, can you really know that that's true? Are you 100% sure about that? And I want you to question these false ideas. And if you can go so far as to actually find evidence to oppose it, this is how we actually leverage this idea out of our subconscious mind. So we can take it a step further and say, well, is there any evidence that I am good enough to be in a relationship? That I do have nice characteristics or qualities to offer to a relationship, or things about me that are lovable or would be lovable to a partner. And when you can find a few pieces of evidence, we start to dislodge these ideas from our subconscious mind. And this is actually how we counteract these big insecurities. We can't get rid of our insecurities if we don't first understand them. And I'm going to give you a second piece here in a second, a second tool, but this is our first major one. It's to realize insecurities are feedback. They're showing you these old stories, or false ideas you've acquired about yourself based on the past, often when you were children, and they put you in this state of conditioning or learned helplessness in terms of what you believe about yourself. We have to make these ideas conscious by actually saying, okay, what is the story I tell myself when I feel insecure? What are those big stories I'm carrying? And then we have to challenge them and find evidence to oppose them. Okay. This is how we start to wiggle them out of our subconscious mind and recondition them. Point number two, if you are struggling with insecurity, a big reason why can also be that you have not properly individuated yet. What do I mean by that? I mean, you will always feel more insecure and more fragile to the outside world when you haven't deeply discovered who you are just yet in your internal world. And a really powerful exercise to do exactly this is to work through asking yourself, who am I in the 7 areas of life? So I'm going to list out these areas. I'm going to take you through a bit of an exercise that you can work through here. We have a career area of life. You being individuated in your career doesn't mean just having a career that pays well. It means you being in a career that you have deeply considered. You've decided this is something that's meaningful to you, that lights up your world in some way, and you're pursuing it for personal reasons, not because it's a career that your parents wanted you to be in, not because it's a career that seemed like it would make you a good fit for somebody in a relationship one day, but actually because you've taken the time to consider. If you're not in that career yet, if you know what it is and you're taking some active steps to move yourself towards that by getting educated or certified in something, or by putting yourself in a position where you're setting yourself up to maybe start your own business and you're taking those action steps, whatever it is, if you're moving in that direction and you've deeply taken the time to consider who you are, this is a form of individuation. Being kind of on autopilot and just letting the outside world choose for you means that you're still deriving your sense of self and identity from the outside in, which means that your identity is more about what other people think than what you've chosen to be. And because of that, you'll have this fragile sense of self that when somebody rejects you or potentially pulls away or does something like that, it will land in a different way than if you have a sense of solid self in all these 7 areas of life. I just said career. Financially is another area of life. Okay. Who are you financially? This is a question for you to consider. Are you somebody who wants to just spend a whole bunch of money to try to fit in with the world, just on materialistic things that maybe don't even have that much meaning to you? Or are you somebody who's trying to achieve financial freedom or set yourself up for the future or save money to help support friends and family? Or, do you have a budget that you stick to and it's personal to you and you know what those parameters are for how you want to spend your money? These are questions we ask ourselves to find out who we are. Now, you can keep asking yourself these same types of questions as you go through career, then financial, then mental. Mental is the area of life that's about our learning, our habits, the things that are really important to us as people in these areas. So, this can be anything from like your political views, your philosophical views, your opinions, your ideas, the topics you just love to research about and learn about in your spare time. Having an individuated sense of self there means that you've considered this area of your life. You know what your sort of passions and hobbies and topics of interest are. You know who you are in the mental area. Emotionally, same thing, right? The emotional area of life is about our feelings, our emotions, our emotional connections to other people, the things that we feel connected to, how we regulate ourselves and self soothe, how we personally grow and develop in the emotional area of life. So you want to start going through these different areas of life and finding who you are. It may take time. I'm going to list the other areas of life in just a moment. But as you start to do this work, building this sense of identity from the inside out rather than the outside in will make you a significantly more confident person. It will give you the tools that you really need to thrive and to feel that deep inner sense of true self confidence. So I will share with you a link you can check out for free down below before I go through the last areas of the 7 areas of life. um, and that link will actually give you access to a webinar style course we have all about individuation. And it really goes into a lot of detail on how to individuate, how to ask yourself the right questions. It's all about really defining your sense of self in all these major areas. So I will put that down below and you can check it out for free for 7 days, just for a limited time. So I'll put that there. But as we go through these different 7 areas, we have our career, our financial, mental, emotional, spiritual area of life. This can be something religious, something just spiritual, a personal relationship to God, just a personal relationship to morals and values that are meaningful to you. And then we have physical, which can be your health, how you care for yourself physically, your habits, your routines. And then we have relationships, what's meaningful to you, what you're looking for in friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, your standards, your non negotiables. As we individuate more, develop a deeper sense of self, we have the capacity at that point to feel much more confident because we're confident in who we are. It's hard to feel confident in who you are if you just don't know who that is yet. So, check out that individuation course for free for that limited time if you want to, using the link down below. Let me know any other questions you have in the comments about this topic. If you want to see more videos about individuation on this channel, please let me know as well. And if you are new here, thank you for stopping by. Please consider subscribing. I would love to have you here. I create almost daily videos. I usually create daily videos like every single day. So subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any. And I can't wait to see you in the future videos on this channel.